Every year, there are a handful of NBA teams who truly believe they have what it takes to win it all. In some cases, those organizations are right. In others, they're delusional. Today, I'm going to examine 5 of the top teams around the association and determine if they're contenders or pretenders ahead of the 2023 season. There will be at least one more part dedicated to this series, so if your favorite team isn't in this video, that's why. Let's kick things off with the Boston Celtics. Boston has been quote-unquote all in for some time now, but they took that to the next level by acquiring Kristaps Porzingis this offseason, extending him, and also making Jaylen Brown the richest man in NBA history by giving him the Supermax. Working under the restrictions of the new CBA, those decisions will force Boston to make some very tough financial calls 2 to 3 years down the road, which means they need to win it all to justify that payroll. Trading the heart and soul of the team in Marcus Smart was a bold choice, but in my opinion, it was a necessary one, as they needed to shake things up in the locker room from a leadership standpoint. Boston's potential starting lineup of Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Al Horford, and Kristaps Porzingis is incredibly dangerous. They have the firepower to be a top 3 team offensively and the length and athleticism to be the best defensive team in the entire league. We also can't forget about Malcolm Brogdon and Rob Williams, who will be a deadly 1-2 punch off the bench. With all of those factors in mind, I'd be foolish to reach any other conclusion than calling the Celtics contenders. Moving on to one of Boston's biggest rivals, the Philadelphia 76ers. At this stage in the offseason, the Sixers find themselves in no man's land. They're just not good enough to compete for the title, but the talent on their roster is too great to justify blowing it up and entering a rebuild in the eyes of many. Personally, I think Philly should seriously consider trading Joel Embiid while his value is at an all-time high. They can net one of the best return packages in NBA history and build a new core around those pieces with Tyrese Maxey. But for now, we'll proceed as if they're going to try to win, because that's much more realistic. The James Harden situation is continuing to spiral out of control with no end in sight. It will likely end up in the Sixers dumping Harden for a minimal return, which would leave Philly with Embiid, Maxey, and one of the worst contracts in the league in Tobias Harris. While hiring Nick Nurse was a step in the right direction, this team just isn't good enough to make some noise in the playoffs. Outside of the 2018-19 season with Jimmy Butler, they've been perennial pretenders, and that's my verdict for the upcoming campaign. Moving on to the Los Angeles Lakers. LA made some serious noise post-trade deadline last year, looking like a completely different squad on both ends of the floor. This offseason, the Lakers retained the major pieces that helped get them to the Western Conference Finals, re-signing Austin Reeves, D'Angelo Russell, and Rui Hachimura, while also bolstering their depth with Gabe Vincent and Taurean Prince. It's hard not to love how balanced this roster is from top to bottom. They'll still go as far as LeBron James and Anthony Davis can carry them, which is no guarantee considering their respective injury histories, but this is a legitimate squad built around those two. The guard rotation of Reeves, Russell, and Vincent provides a significant offensive boost. Jarred Vanderbilt is one of the most versatile defenders in the league, and the bench has more than enough talent. Make no mistake about it, the Lakers are legit. This team is a contender. Next up, the Milwaukee Bucks. Milwaukee is in an interesting spot, as their regular season performances haven't translated into postseason success over the last couple of years. Last year specifically was a wake-up call, as the Bucks dominated all throughout the regular season, finishing with the best record in the NBA at 58-24. They then proceeded to get shocked by the Heat in the first round. Mike Budenholzer was fired, which in reality was a decision that would have come much earlier if Milwaukee didn't win the finals a few years ago, and new head coach Adrian Griffin will look to revitalize the locker room. From a roster standpoint, not much about this team has changed. It'll be the same starting lineup as last year and most of the same rotational pieces, although Javon Carter is out and Malik Beasley is in. The most important thing for Milwaukee is Chris Middleton's health. If he can stay on the floor, they have as good a shot to win it all as any team. If he can't, it's proven difficult for Giannis and Jrue Holiday to make up for his absence. As of right now, this team is a contender in my eyes, but things can change quickly depending on their injury situation. Moving on to our last team, the Phoenix Suns. This is where things get really interesting. The Suns took an unprecedented financial gamble this offseason, acquiring Bradley Beal to create a super team of him, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and DeAndre Ayton. Those four combined are making around $165 million alone next year, which already puts Phoenix right up against the luxury tax threshold. Even with the rest of the roster virtually on minimums, they're pushing past the second apron under the new CBA, which puts significant restrictions on future moves. Outside of those four players and Eric Gordon, who was a much needed pickup for the Suns, their depth is practically non-existent. Phoenix needs their stars to stay healthy, and that just hasn't been the case. Over the last 2 years, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker have combined to play 313 regular season games out of a possible 492. These guys are going to miss time, and it will be ugly when they do. We haven't even talked about the lack of defensive upside on this roster, which is going to be a serious problem come playoff time. There are a lot of questions about this squad heading into the year, and I think an implosion is more probable than a title run. As a result, I have to declare the Suns pretenders. Those are my verdicts on 5 of the most prominent teams in the NBA. Stay tuned for the next part where I'll do the same thing for a different group of squads.